internal and external actors. Now more than ever, in today's world of anytime, anywhere accessibility, users don't give security a second thought. After all, that's IT's problem. The result is greater reliance on public key infrastructures and hardware security modules. So, every time a user logs into your network from home, the office, or even a coffee shop from a laptop or a mobile device, your PKI ensures they're who they claim to be. When a point of sales, ATM, or even two machines on a factory floor talk securely to each other, they rely on PKIs. And when businesses make assurances that communications and customer data are private, PKIs make it happen. With work from home becoming the norm, that means more remote devices and access points. The rise of multi-cloud architecture, microservices, and IoT devices all present new risks from internal and external actors. Now, more than ever, your PKIs and HSMs need to be available, functional, and secure. That's not easy. It's difficult to access the necessary event and configuration info. Many IT organizations do not have the expertise and training to spot problems. Even those that do lack the time and the products they need to effectively manage and monitor their PKIs and HSMs. That's all about to change. Introducing PKI Spotlight from PKI Solutions. It's the first public key infrastructure management solution built from the ground up to let you see the unseen. With PKI Spotlight, you finally have real-time monitoring and alerting that puts the availability, configuration, and security of all your PKI and HSM environments conveniently at your fingertips. PKI Spotlight aggregates events, configurations, and roles from your PKIs and HSMs and presents them in a consolidated dashboard for easy exploration and filtering. Use PKI Spotlight to create notifications and alerts for proactive escalations across tools of your choice, as well as security and operations groups. With PKI Spotlight from PKI Solutions, you're better equipped to prevent and respond to business disruptions by improving the uptime, availability, and recoverability of your PKIs and hardware security modules. You strengthen your organization's cybersecurity risk profile by gaining visibility into configurations that can impact identity and encryption systems. And you can detect abnormal behavior in your PKI more quickly and accurately and take action. PKI Spotlight also comes with up-to-date best practices developed from years of experience, at last closing the knowledge gap. With PKI Spotlight from PKI Solutions, you finally have what you need to see the unseen.
All right. We let it play. We are 4 minutes into our webinar, so I think we're going to start today. We're about to start, and I see folks joining in as always from around the globe. So welcome everyone. Let me share our presentation for today's our agenda, and let's go to the first slide, which should be where we start. Okay, excellent. So I'm Munir Mubashir. I lead marketing here at PKI Solutions. With me is Nick Siricobolt, who is the Senior Program Manager for PKI Spotlight, and Michael Bruno, who is the lead PKI developer here. If you have joined a previous PKI Spotlight webinar, you are probably familiar with both Nick and Michael. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the webinar today. Okay.
Glad to be here. Yeah, me too.
Excellent.
Sorry to leave you hanging there.
It's okay. I was like, it's a webinar lag. But our agenda, right, for today is, of course, all PKI Spotlight. Quick housekeeping for folks who have not joined before. We started something new with our previous webinar. Is we pick 3 lucky winners from every webinar, And the rules are as follows. Attend this webinar, of course, and also answer our LinkedIn polls. So we do these regular LinkedIn polls, they're knowledge checks, and answer them, and we pick 3 lucky winners who will win PKI Spotlight swag. So it's one of those fine water bottles or a coffee mug. I know we always need yet another coffee mug. That's one. Second, what we do is we record and answer any questions that you might have on the webinar page. So keep an eye out for emails that come from Kelsey, that comes from Carolyn, where we've summarized the conversation, the questions on this webinar. So with that, I am going to transfer to Nick. Nick, it's all yours. Why don't you get us started?
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's been a while. And so it's just really great that you all are here today, and we're excited to share with you what we've been up to. Gosh, I'm sitting here and I can't believe it's been a year already since we've launched PKI Spotlight. And I can see a lot of the names here and some of the folks I've met, we've had a privilege to meet, and others look forward to meeting. But since we've launched about a year ago, our mission, our product mission, hasn't changed. It's still the same. And I thought I'd touch on those things a little bit before we get in. And I promise you this won't be a death by PowerPoint type of webinar. But our product mission essentially is improving the uptime, availability, and recoverability of your PKIs and hardware security module environments. It's maintaining the security integrity of your PKIs with visibility into configurations that can impact your identity and encryption systems. And it must quickly spot any abnormal activity, anomalies in your PKI environments. And then last but not least, reviewing and refining your PKI operational and configuration practices, right? So with that, our go-to-market focused on addressing your biggest challenges. We heard from you, we hear from you, we hear you. It's lack of time, lack of visibility, lack of expertise in supporting and managing your PKI environments. We rolled out PKI Spotlight, prioritizing visibility into your ADCS environments. So whether you've inherited the environment, no matter what your experience level is with PKI, you now have Spotlight helping you avoid business outages, and then most importantly, detecting configuration drift that can lead to issues with your PKI environment security compliance. I realized that we hadn't connected in the webinar since last year. So it might be helpful just for those who aren't familiar, let me just give you a quick recap of the last release last October. No more zombie state CAs that go undetected until it's too late. No more undetected issues with your undev servers. Spotlights is a live capability, goes through its checklists of dependencies to detect pre-failure conditions. Any of these pre-failure conditions that are met, you get an alert, you're able to take action. You now have the confidence of knowing your PKI environment is alive. We added best practice rules that continuously check the status of PKI and HSM configurations. And we check them against security and operational best practices. This happens in real time. So you always know if anything changes and you know what to do to fix it. And then last, CRL monitoring and pre-failure CRL error detection is another capability that watches your CRLs and directs you to those errors early so you can fix them before they affect your work. that being said, I want to get into our new release because I think that's why you're all here, and we're excited to talk about it and share with you. I know that there's some slides ahead. I think what we'll do, we'll call an audible. We'll go through those slides. We won't go through the slides because you have access to these. But let me just walk you through what you're going to see next. We effectively build on our real-time event and health engine and added this ability to detect vulnerabilities and threats to your PKI environment. These vulnerabilities, we all know, often start with a misconfiguration. That misconfiguration leads to more serious security issues if not addressed. Mike is going to will demo how easy a simple misconfiguration to your certificate template can lead to issues, and then how Spotlight will ensure you're on top of these template misconfigurations and best practices. After that, Mike, you're going to be up again to show us how Spotlight can also detect known vulnerabilities that are out in the wild, like PetitPotam. After that, Mike, you can hand it back to me. I'll show you an example of the level of PKI insight and expertise that's included in our best practices. And then finally, I'll show you how PKI Spotlight now supports other types of CAs like HashiCorp and EJBCA. That's right, we're not just an Active Directory ADCS party anymore. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to my friend, my lead dev, Mike. You want to take us through this feature? And again, if you go through the next couple of slides, everyone, you'll get the slide deck, but we'll just jump right into it.
Okay, thanks so much, Nick. So yeah, today I am the lead PKI developer here on PKI Spotlight. In my previous life, though, I've been a PKI engineer at two large organizations. One was a pharma company, one was a bank. So I have many years of experience operating and enhancing PKIs. And I can tell you that one of the key blind spots is certificate templates. They are an often neglected threat vector. Templates get created, modified, accessed, opened up for access for things like production pilots, POCs, and of course the fire drill style troubleshooting we sometimes have to do to get the business back up and running. So that's why we decided to focus on certificate templates for this release. And I'm going to share with you what we've been working on. So when we went to design the interface for certificate templates in Spotlight, we had a look at the built-in Microsoft certificate template snap-in. We thought about what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it. So with PKI Spotlight, as long as you have at least one PKI Spotlight agent installed on a machine in each of your Active Directory forests, we'll be able to monitor the certificate templates container in that forest, along with many other PKI-related containers. So one thing that we added that we thought was really important that's missing in the Microsoft implementation is that you have your laundry list of certificate templates in the forest. However, we're also showing you in this in-use column which ones are actually assigned to one or more CAs. Those are the ones, obviously, that you need to worry about. And so as you can see, we have the most commonly thought about columns here. If you click on the eye icon for any given template, we'll give you all the information you would see in the certificate template snap-in that Microsoft provides, and a little bit more. So you can take a look at this as I'm scrolling down. It's all right here in one list rather than tabs. I've personally always felt the tabs were a little bit confusing and not that intuitive to use. So this is great, right? We have this view of certificate templates, but as I was saying, they're an often neglected threat vector for not just your PKI, but your environment as a whole. And let me show you just how damaging a misconfigured certificate template could be used. So I'm going to use a utility called Certify to demonstrate this for you. But before I do that, first of all, let me show you who I'm logged in as. I'm JRogue. So let's look up JRogue just to prove to you that I have no extended rights in this Active Directory. Here's my membership. I'm in domain users. That's it. I'm just a regular Joe, Johnny Rogue, no extended permissions. Now before we go on, let's take a look at the most privileged users in this forest, the enterprise admins. And let's take a look who's in that group. All right, here's our members. And let's pick on this guy, Chris Rivers. And just for fun, let's take a look at what his username is. It's $C Rivers, trying to obfuscate it with that $. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for him. All right, so we know the identity of a enterprise admin. So again, I'm going to use this utility called Certify, which is sort of a Swiss Army knife for abusing ADCS to escalate privileges and find other vulnerabilities. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scan the public key services container for vulnerabilities in this organization's PKI. And once the response comes back, I'll show you that it found a vulnerable template. So why is this template vulnerable? Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it allows the enrollee to supply the subject. So what that means is that the enrollee is going to be allowed to put whatever identity it wants in the certificate request. Combine that with the fact that there are no authorized signatures required for the certificate to be issued. So that means that as long as I have read and enroll permissions on this template, as soon as I submit a request to the CA, as long as that CA is online and receiving requests, it's going to go ahead and issue that certificate. There's no checks and balances, no approval workflow. And finally, one of the juiciest things about this template is that it has a client authentication enhanced key usage. And if you've worked with PKI at any length, you know how powerful that usage is, because it can be used for authentication, certificate-based authentication. Okay, so we found a vulnerable template. So let's exploit it now. I'm going to use Certify again to request a certificate against this template. Give me 1 second. Now, I want to make one thing clear. So I'm using Certify to execute this exploit. However, it's definitely not required. It just makes things go a lot faster. So the one thing that I'm doing here is I'm setting the alt name, the subject alternative name, to our enterprise admin friend's username, $C Rivers. Okay. And there it goes. I've got my cert. So now I'm going to go ahead and copy the certificate and private key bundle. And then I will record it in a text file. Now I'm going to use OpenSSL to convert this certain key into a PKCS12 bundle. Okay, and finally, I'm going to use another utility called Rubius to actually use this certificate this certificate to request a Kerberos token for the user $C Rivers. So you probably know what Kerberos is, but if you don't, think of it as a Windows authentication token in its purest form. So at this point, I've bypassed any kind of multi-factor authentication, any kind of password, anything. I have a Kerberos token that is assigned to an enterprise admin. So what can I do? Well, let's see. New AD user, name, let's say, okay, and now, so I created a user. I was just a regular old Joe, and I created a user. And I'll show you, I'll prove to you that it actually was created. And there she is. So, pretty benign, but think of if I am an enterprise admin, I have full and complete control over this AD now. I can change passwords. I can publish a rogue CA certificate as a trusted root. I can do anything I want. I own this AD forest now. So now in PKI Spotlight, as I was mentioning before, we've introduced what's called best practices. And if I had PKI Spotlight as the PKI operator in this organization, as soon as that template had been assigned to any CA in my organization, I would have gotten a best practice alert that looks like this. Certificate template is configured to allow the subject name to be supplied in the request, but no secondary approval is required. So it's telling me exactly what's wrong with that template. And if I click on that alert and have a look, it gives me the template name, and we get a longer form description, and then we have the remediation steps. So we're not just telling you what's wrong, we're telling you how to fix it. So this, and as I was mentioning before, certificate templates get changed, they get created, they get assigned, and there's no native alerting or monitoring that Microsoft provides. But with PKI Spotlight, now you have it, and you can cut a major vulnerability like that off at the pass. So while we're talking about threats and vulnerabilities, a relatively recent threat that is PKI related that's been recently discovered is called PetitPotam. It's an NTLM relay attack that was discovered by a French researcher named Lionel Gilles. So an NTL relay attack is, again, it's an escalation of privilege attack. What it does is it uses Microsoft's EFS, encrypted file system, RPC, to connect to a server, hijack the authentication session, and manipulate the results such that the server believes that the attacker has the legitimate rights to access it. And Windows servers that have the ADCS web enrollment and certificate enrollment web service roles are vulnerable to the PetitPotam attack unless certain protection measures are taken. So the easiest way to protect against PetitPotam is to essentially disable NTLM altogether on the host. And first of all, let me go through these threats that have come up. So as you can see, I have a server that has the CES role installed, and I have 3 separate threats here. The reason for that is that there's a couple of different ways to take care of the PetitPotam threat, so that it's not so that you're not vulnerable to it anymore. One of them, as I was saying, is to disable NTLM altogether, either at the host level or at the IIS website level. If that's not a possibility, and in a lot of cases it's not, because third-party applications sometimes rely on NTLM. Sometimes you have legacy clients out there that need to use it. There's still a way to protect yourself. there's 3 different things you need to do. So each of these threat alerts are speaking to each of those elements that need to be done. So let me go over to my demo here. So if you want to disable NTLM at the host level, you have to set a group policy such that incoming NTLM traffic is denied to everyone, deny all accounts. If you don't want to do it at the host level, then you can do it at the website level by going to authentication and then Windows authentication and providers. And then the enabled providers cannot include NTLM or negotiate. If you have negotiate in there, that means that the client is allowed to negotiate down to NTLM still. So a better provider is negotiate Kerberos, so that the website will actually insist on Kerberos authentication. But again, we're going to pretend here that I need to allow NTLM in my environment. So going back to the threat screen, the first threat here is saying that it's not configured to enforce extended protection for authentication in the web.config file. Let's come back to that one in a second. Let's go down to the second one here. The server is vulnerable because the certain enrollment web service is not configured to use extended protection. So these 2 alerts kind of work hand in hand. So let me show you how I would resolve that. So if I go to my website here and I go back to authentication and Windows authentication, and this time I'm going to go to advanced settings and I'm going to hit for extended protection, I'm going to say required. Okay, great. So there's one problem. So even though I've enabled extended protection in IIS, it actually has to be enforced in the web.config for the website. So I'm going to go into web.config and I'm going to find the place where that needs to be changed. So I need to add a subnode here that says that extended protection is always required. So I'll enter that here. Make it pretty. So here we go. Extended protection policy. Policy enforcement equals always. Okay. So that's 2 things down. I've enabled extended protection and I've enforced extended protection in web.config. The third thing, if we go back to threats, is that the website does not require SSL, or better yet, TLS. SSL doesn't exist anymore. So let me go back to IIS. And this is, just go right to SSL settings and just tick require SSL and apply. And now this CES server is protected from the PetitPotam vulnerability. And PKI Spotlight will, within a few minutes, will detect that I've made those changes, and these threat entries will resolve all on their own. So, and this is just the beginning. PetitPotam is just the beginning. Another thing I'd like you to take away from this is that we're not just telling you that you're vulnerable and telling you go figure out how to fix it. We're giving you granular information about what you need to do to resolve this vulnerability. With that, I am going to kick it back over to Nick to continue.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mike. I think we actually have a couple of poll questions.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure we had some time. And this is really critical for us because I can see Mike. I can't see all of you out there, but I know you're engaged. Your eyes are out. Everyone's asking really good questions. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah. So before we get into this, I just want to, I know there's some comments coming in. We, as part of this, we prefer, if you have questions, please put them in Q&A, but it's okay if you put them in chat. We move these questions to the Q&A section. So just saying, in case you see your comments disappear, that helps us in tracking, that helps us in actually providing better responses. So just an FYI as we're kind of going through the questions. So I do have a couple of polls that I wanted to run as Nick gets ready to show some of the improved best practice playbooks as well as HashiCorp support. So the poll number one really is around NTLM. How many of you still have NTLM enabled in your environment? I know, as Michael says, old is new, and sometimes you just can't get away with it just because you have some legacy applications running in the environment. We're curious to see how many of you still have NTLM enabled. So if you could respond to that, that'd be fantastic. And then I'll also pull in another poll question as we give, Nick just needs a little breathing room to get started. And that's about the percentage of time you spend focused on PKIs. We see a cross spectrum. As you know, PKI Solutions works with at least, I would say, 50 plus customers during the course of the year. And you're dealing with different variations in the amount of time spent focused on PKIs. So again, unscientific, the poll is more around how much time do you spend on PKI administration? We will be excited to hear if you're 100%. We'll also be excited to hear if it's 15%, 20%, but trying to get a feel for the amount of time you spend focusing on PKI administrations. We know that most of you have other responsibilities that you juggle in addition to the PKI focus. So please feel free. I'd love to get that. It's an open text on the percentage of time you spent so that we can you can type in whatever is relevant to your day. So as these questions are being answered, Nick, why don't you show us an example of the improved and updated playbook?
Yeah, great. I think I figured this out, and I've got the dashboard up. Let me go ahead and got my best practices navigation. Here we go. I'm going to pick on, let's pick on an alert here. And again, just in case for some of you who've seen this, haven't seen this before, gone are the days are, and I've done this before in the past, running a point in time health check or some type of assessment. We built the assessment into this health engine. So this, again, like just to reiterate, running in real time behind the scenes. And so you're getting these best practices alerts. And again, I think everything we've seen here is the dashboard. We know that the dashboard is not everyone can sit at the dashboard. So being able to imagine getting these alerts either an email to your incident management system like a ServiceNow, etc. But let me get into this a little bit, because what you see here, you get to see the risk level, you get to see the roles impacted, all of this in one screen. You get to see which ones are active. But specifically, once you drill into it, and I mentioned this at the top, I talked about, when you go into here, you might be a pro, you might be an advanced, experienced PKI, a lot of experience there. You might not have any, or you might be training or bringing on some folks who have no experience, but you're bringing them online. You're training them up. So let's look at what you see here. In this instance, let's take a look. So you, in the scenario that most often takes place, it's happened to me, we inherit a PKI environment. We're not familiar with the environment itself. There's settings. In this instance, take an example. There's a registry key setting here that effectively is when it's turned on, causes some issues, and then specifically as you're setting up test environments, as you're setting up other environments, you might be enabling some configurations. Looking at this here, you get a direct description and impact into what it is, and then even more specifically, you get to get a playbook, a remediation step by step on what you need to do to fix it, right? And why is this so important? Here, like I can go into this a little bit more here. I can't see my screen. There you go. So if I were to click on this, it provides you, even sends you out to some additional information from our experts, from our team, Mark and Jake. So it's almost as if you're having Mark and Jake as a bot in your system, giving you all of this expertise and insight. But again, listen to reiterate what it is, right? So oftentimes this setting would have gone unnoticed. It would have gone undetected. Until an issue would have come out. So instead, you're alerted of this, and unless you get to determine if this is meaningful to you or not, and if it is, then you'll go ahead and you know how to remediate it. You have the steps and you have all the materials you need to submit it into a change request or what have you. And once it's done, then the alert will go away because it's stateful. So just giving you an example, and this is one of many of the best practices and many of the type of content that you'll receive that is constantly curated by our experts that from professional services to ensure that on a quarterly basis, again, you are staying on top of not only the up-to-date content, but also like what to do once you receive this alert.
So Nick, as I was kind of telling you, and folks in the audience, I always, when we do these best practices, I always sit in a room with Nick, with Michael, and Sean Roburn, who's our CTO, is answering some of the questions, and Mark Cooper, and I go, who gives, right? Who gives a, I always start with that. Who gives a rat's ass that we're covering this best practice? And the most interesting story there was Sean basically looks at me. He goes, I can tell you the moment when we asked for this enhancement in Active Directory, because we wanted to quickly troubleshoot issues in certificate authorities and turn off revocation checking. And he was like, we did not realize that this would become an issue because folks would turn off certificate revocation checking and then forget about it. And the implication of what I call downstream implication for dependency on other systems that depend on certificate checking now can be immense. So this alert just sits there. This registry key setting just sits there in an environment. No alert is raised. Someone might have done this like 6 months ago, a year ago, and voila, things worked. Everyone's happy, and that setting is just lurking there. And hence, Mark has that blog, right? The bane of my existence. And that's what we talk about, best practices and capturing all of these and updating them based on lessons learned. So I wanted to share that because that setting put me that moment in the room when I was asking both Sean and Mark as to, who cares about this setting.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing too about this is, when I said this is running in real time, oftentimes you have different environments. You might have one environment that's different, has a different tier level, priority level, security level than the next. So look, having the same set of best practice rules run against your environments, whether it's a test environment, a dev environment, or even like the most priorities production environment, being able to ensure that there's parity. And then if one of these best practices doesn't pertain to an environment, you can go ahead and suppress it, right? So again, having like the question really is, right, it's I know Sean, we talk about this a lot. Are you able to confidently have the answers you need with regards to some of these settings? Are you aware once they're changed? And if not, then we've got your back. And if there's something certainly missing in here, then I'd like to know about it so we can build it in. But you've effectively got a team of experts who are constantly curating and ensuring. Like I think you saw some of the content from Mark about why this is so important is critical.
And I think this is more aligned also with some of the distribution of time commitment on PKIs that we see, and we're seeing something similar on the survey as well, Nick and Michael, that we are, it's across the board, right? It's 10%, 15%, and there's a lot of other activity that's juggled by the PKI admins. And our hope, and this is the premise of the product, is that it helps in that 10%, 15%, and gives you that additional time and capability that you might not have had, before. So with that, I think we'll just go to HashiCorp, right, Nick? Is that what your plan is next?
Yeah, and I'll segue into there. And I know we've got another poll question too. This is something that we're really interested in. But I'll segue into HashiCorp by just offering a couple a story, and maybe like just seeing if this resonates or if this is happening in any of your environments today. But there's a story of an environment, a customer who is mature, very mature in their process, certificate lifecycle management, tooling and automation, self-service request automation, compliance standard lockdown, the whole nine. And all of that, and there was something fell through the crack. And what that was, the development team was able to leverage a turnkey environment in HashiCorp to spin up not only an environment, but get certificates into some apps. Those apps ended up becoming production, and then next thing you know, when those certificates expired, production app went down. So the question is, how not only how could that happen? It's not the question of how could that happen. You all here who are attending are experts in your environments. Your PKI engineers, admins, directors, managers. So how can there's the inevitable? These other alternative services are coming online and are becoming more easier than ever for someone who is very non-technical or may not be the PKI owner or the expert. So how can we stay ahead of this? So we heard from our customers, and it's a scenario that is becoming more and more prevalent in environments. And at the end of the day, those folks who are using those turnkey solutions and coming up with and generating those certs and distributing those certs either to apps and or devices, the buck doesn't stop with them. The compliance level still is with those who are managing PKIs. And that's this community here on this call or in this webinar. So what we've effectively done is now we've given you a tool in Spotlight that you can provide your teams in order to ensure that, like if it's HashiCorp, you're able to get visibility into your CAs, their CAs, and then there's parity with regards to some of the general information that you can pull off of them. The most important one is now you have visibility. I'll repeat that. Now you have visibility into the certificate validity. And then you also are able to get information. I think Mike showed this earlier. He was able to show you some details on certs that Spotlight is able to pull. Now you're able to thing for HashiCorp CAs. So we're just getting started here. I'm just giving you a viewpoint here that not only do we do Active Directory CS certificate services now, but we're looking into HashiCorp. I talked about a little bit about EJBCA. That's another scenario that we're actively designing, and we're looking for design partners. So if that's something that you're interested in as well, we're actively looking for design partners to participate in our early access program for that as well. But what if, like I pose this question also to you, what if you had a tool like this in order to provide your devs or other resources the ability to pull in this information. So not only are you responsible for the ADCS environment, you're responsible for the entire environment. So you have a tool that'll be able to give you that level of visibility and learning.
Excellent, excellent. So that, and I'm kind of looking at the polls here real quick, Nick, and on this. The HashiCorp, we're seeing most of the audience here from like 46 respondents or so. Most of them don't have it deployed. You know, a good percentage doesn't know they have it, and you know, I think about 23% says that they have it as well. And I want to address a couple of points here, and it gets me excited because it comes up in the questions as well, and it's related to EJBC and Microsoft standard and the standards. There was a question that came, it's like, where are you pulling these standards for? And as an, I would say as an ex-ITIL masters and who was heavy into COVID controls and also built products on Center for Internet Security Standards, right? Compliance, PCI, configuration analysis in my old life. I can tell you there's nothing in the industry that has equivalent of standards for PKIs, ADCS, for let's say the Cassandras of the world or Apaches of the world or ISs of the world. And PKI Solutions is at the forefront of defining these best practices. And historically, if you look at one of those config checkers that I'd built, you know, back in the day, you know, they ran across the Center for Internet Security Standards, and you know, and then you have these playbooks and runbooks, and we wrote code that checked against it. There's nothing that exists for ADCS. There's no XML file that I can go to and you know, or a JSON file that I can go to and run it across an engine. You see Michael Bruno developing that code. Mark taking, you know, the work we did with assessment, Sean, so none exists. And this kind of begs the question, we have a critical asset in our infrastructure that can be opened up, just like, you know, Michael demonstrated. There's no standard, but someone has to develop the standard. And I think this is where, you know, PKI Solutions and PKI Spotlight, I feel, you know, excited because I know what's out there in other areas. So just wanted to kind of highlight that because there was a question that came up a few times around standards. How do we get this? And that was my same question I asked Mark, you know, the first week I was there. I was like, what, there's no standard? It's like, no, there's not. So that's some background, and that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I know we're 11 minutes away from the end of the webinar, and Sean has been answering the questions.
Yeah, yes.
You know, and I don't know if you want to take a few, Nick. You want to take a few. I think one of the things you did mention, and it's in the questions, is talking about both EJBCA and HashiCorp, the early access program you're building out. Maybe you might want to kind of, you know, touch upon that with the audience.
It's pretty simple in the chat. Just I think we saw a couple of people who are interested in. We'll follow up with you after, and we'll schedule some follow up with you and give you articulate all the details.
Yeah, so the net is feel free to, you know, reach out to us, and Nick will get you in the program. So there is we will be sending out you know, the deck as well as the recording. You will be hearing from Carolyn Bala, who is the account relationship manager. So she could be your point of reference for being part of the early access program. And then Kelsey, of course, will also reach out to you to announce the winners. And since I have you, and I'm in that the mode of polling, right? I know. I'm gonna ask one more poll question, Nick. I'm gonna do that. Michael, you're supposed to give me a chance to ask this question, but here it is. The question is, how do you check for these exploitable misconfigurations in your Microsoft ADCS environment? How do you do that today? How do you consistently do it? And we wanted to get a feel for how it's being done and how it's being done consistently. So thank you for answering our poll questions and engaging with us. As that's happening, I just want to kind of wrap up on a few points. And we're calling this like more of the macro level. And I promise this is not us trying to sell you things. It really is us feeling the urgency of what is going on around us. And the first thing is the implications, the so what, right? So what we do this. I think if we look in this landscape of where we are, having a hardened, up-to-date PKI that's constantly checked against best practices should make our lives easier, right? It should reduce our risk profile. Take any of the risk profile, frameworks that are used, we do that. And we also, by the way, mapped all what PKI Spotlight does to the NIST framework and a couple of other frameworks, and that's in progress. We can show you it improves your maturity across the board, both at the protect level as well as threat analysis. And the other thing is that the developer velocity, we build cloud native applications, and developers will be developers. They're worried about velocity, pipelines, and getting to code. And that's where the PKI expertise needs to come through in organizations. We don't want to slow down developer velocity, but at the same time, we don't want to introduce risk in the enterprise. And that's why you see the the HashiCorp tie-ins and more developer-centric approaches that we're taking. And the last is, we do treat PKI Spotlight as an advisor. So that is, we want it to be at least a full-time equivalent productivity gain for you. And if you look at what we see, and we see it across the board, it's 10%, 15%, 20% time commitment. Not because you don't want to focus on PKIs, it's just because you have other things that you manage. So we are treating our PKI Spotlight as a full-time equivalent. And where is this happening? What's the landscape? If you're not aware of this, we want to share some of these. Of course, state actors are on the rise. You see this, and they are getting intelligent enough to see where certificates are being used. And then we have some laws, the SEC laws about cybersecurity disclosure. If you're part of the publicly traded company, your CISOs need to care about it. The board needs to care about it. And the headline that hit us, and it just kind of, we're like, wow, is this what's going on? That Zurich, who's one of the largest cybersecurity liability insurers in the world, says it will be expensive and we might not be able to insure for cybersecurity. It's like bad drivers, right? No one wants to insure bad drivers, or if they do, the premium is high. So these changes are there with President Biden's quantum computing. So PKIs are going to be we'll have the spotlight, pardon the pun, but and that's what we're excited about, what we're working on. So with that, feel free to connect with us, Carolyn Ballo, and I put this out there. We love our products. This is what's called the bias that every product company in the world has. If you think this is not useful in your environment, we would like to know why. As simple as that. We don't want to fall in love with what we do. You are the target audience. You know your environments better than us. If you think it's not going to work, we want to know why and what we can do to change that, because we believe it should, and and we just want to make sure we get a reality check from you. Again,
Yep.
I'll keep dropping the name, Carolyn Ballo. If you have any questions, if you would like to do a test trial evaluation, if you want a deep dive on PKI Spotlight, Carolyn Ballo is your person, and you'll be hearing from her as well as part of the follow-up email. So I think with that, I did my passionate spiel on it, and I'm going to shut up and maybe give a few more minutes back to the audience. But one question we should take there, it's from Patrick. How's the merger with Fena Group impacting your development of the PKI solution tools or licensing of these tools? So Fena Group impact, Nick, you want to take it? I know you've been working on the integration strategy as well.
We have a solid. We had before Fena, and we're excited about that partnership. We had a roadmap provided by our community and our professional services level of expertise. I think that roadmap was about two years out. The Fena partnership does not change that roadmap. And the question that when you're teed up for you all, if this doesn't work, then why not? That will impact the roadmap more than anything else. So we are locked in. We've heard from you. We know what the product needs to do. We're not vendor agnostic like some of the other competing products. If there is something like that out there, we know that you're challenged with a number of different vectors, a number of different solutions, a number of different providers, and we're racing to get them incorporated into the product. So I know that's a high level, but I'm happy to, like Munir mentioned, if you're looking at the demo, and I looked at this poll result, I think this is the first time where we've actually had more people who haven't really seen the product yet. And so I'm proud that you guys are here, and I'm happy to share with you some more information, but no impact to the roadmap. And that's coming from the product side. We know what we have to do, and you guys are guiding us on the priorities ahead.
And plug for next week's webinar. We try to keep it up to a monthly webinar cadence, except for when it's PKI Spotlight. So we will be covering that very important topic of the Microsoft OID changes and the three CVs, baked into that KB. And Sean, who has been quiet on this one, we gave him a bit of a break. We'll be on it with Jake and Mark as well. So we will have all three of them, or at least the two of them, on next week's webinar. But we're slated to have both Jake, Mark, and Sean address some of these concerns, lessons learned, the things that are happening real time in organizations as our consulting services works with them to address these changes that Microsoft has introduced and is enforcing as well. So look forward to seeing most of you all in the next week's webinar as well. And thank you again for everyone for joining. We always love doing these webinars and the great questions that are coming.
Yep. We can't thank you all enough.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, everyone.